Welcome back to DS Trucks. In today's video, we're going to be talking about tips and tricks when maintaining your Ford trucks at home. Number one, if you are going to be removing your caps, your lug nut caps, I like to wrap some vinyl tape around my pry bar before going in there. Otherwise, you'll scratch up your wheel. So when you take a look here, you find that little tab that'll allow this to come off, and the vinyl tape will be up against the plastic. So when you pry on it, you won't scratch your paint. And if it weren't for the vinyl tape and you just had metal only, you would scratch your paint on your rim. So one of those things, I mean, they make maybe like a poly. If you had like an all poly pry bar or anything like that, it would work. Now this won't really work on the 450 because it takes a lot more prying motion on the 450 than it does on a 250. Another quick tip though, if you want to maintain your trucks yourself, you're rotating your tires, right? Everyone knows you should do that. But what a lot of people miss is their brake pins. So brake pins. If you're plowing snow or you live in a salt belt, you could actually have a brake failure to cost you a lot of money. Could potentially cost you a new caliper, new rotors, new pads. You could be at $1,000 real quick in just parts. One thing you can do to save you some headache is when you do your oil change, or maybe even just once a year after the winter, before the winter, whatever, you grease your pins. What do you get? You want to get a brake system grease. I like to use CRC, high performance ceramic brake grease. I mean, when you read the reviews on this product, you can look on Amazon, whatever, and the reviews, this is one of the few products that a year, 2, 3 down the road, you're not seeing the rake rubber components failures. It says right here that it is compatible with the rubber that's in the braking system. So some of the other products, when you use them, they eat away at the rubber over time. And you have to read the fine print because they don't necessarily tell you very easily. This product from CRC is one of the few that doesn't. So you can see here my calipers are now floating freely, but that wasn't the case. Just a few, maybe like an hour ago, I just greased all these pins, and they were the bottom ones where you would naturally get more salt and everything. Those ones were seized, and it's causing some uneven wear. Now I'm still gonna be able to continue to run these pads a little longer, but the inside pad has more wear than the outside pad. So brake system will last a good while as long as the pins don't seize up, and that was what's happening here. So on this truck, I'm going to grease all the pins, and that way I can get way more life out of the brake pads. All right, so tip number 3, the tires like to seize onto these trucks because they are hub centric, meaning that when this tire goes onto the truck, it locates itself and centers itself on the hub. So aluminum rim, steel hub, right here where you see that there's this contact. What happens a lot is these wheels end up getting stuck on these trucks because of the dissimilar metals. So what I like to do is put a little bit of grease just on this hub right here when the tires go on the truck. What that means is when I go to take these tires off in a year, 6 months, however long it is, I can actually get them off versus having the wheel seize onto the truck and not be able to come off. I think it's too much to grease all of this area where it's flat. I don't think you want that. I think you actually want a good amount of static friction against the face here. But right here in the hub, I like to put a little grease to prevent the wheel from sticking. If you've ever taken one of these tires off of one of these trucks and noticed that the wheel won't come off, that's why. All right, next tip, if your tires are heavy and you don't want to lift these up to try to line them up and everything, you actually can use a bar to lift the tires. So basically like a jack. You can even use like a pry bar, even if it's only 12 inches long. It's better than nothing. But you could just take this under here and you could just scoop the tire up with the bar just like this, just taking a little bite. And then when you get close enough, you can actually just put this under here, grab the top of the tire, and you can pick the whole tire up with the bar. You don't have to lift it. and strain and struggle, and you kind of line up the studs, and that's it. You can push the tire onto the truck. You don't have to lift, hurt your back. Another tip is it's a good idea to clean off your oil filter and bottom of your pan. Now with the oil filter on these Ford trucks, being that they're mounted in the upright position, you can fill the filter if you want to. Not necessarily a necessity, but if you have a little OCD and want to put oil in the filter to make the oil pump, to make it a little bit easier for the oil pump to prime the system, you can put some oil in the filter and pre-fill the filter. But if a little bit of residual oil is sitting on this lip up here, it could make it appear that your filter is leaking, and it might cause you to want to tighten it up some more. The way to tighten this is just tighten it by hand and give it 3/4 of a turn after it's tight. Now when I say by hand, it's just right when it stops, and I use a oil filter wrench to do 3/4 of a turn. You could do it all by hand if you really just crank on it hard by hand, but I just turn it until it stops, and then I throw the wrench on there and give it 3/4 of a turn with the wrench. I feel that is more consistent for me, but a lot of people don't like to use a wrench when they tighten it. But up in here, in this little seal, in this little crack, right in here, it's good to spray some brake clean right in there where the straw is pointing, and the pan itself, because if you're checking for leaks and your pan already has a drip from the change, it's hard to check for leaks if your pan's covered in oil. So spray the pan and spray the filter, and up in the seal, the O-ring area. There is a grease fitting on the front drive shaft, both sides. Oftentimes this is forgotten, so don't be the one who forgets, because if you do, it's going to be a lot of money. Clean the tip off, throw your grease gun on there with some good grease, some synthetic grease, like an Amsoil or Mobil 1 or something, and go ahead and grease up the front half shafts. Doesn't take much. Only grease fitting on the 250s, and the 450s have greasable ball joints. Don't forget. All right, and last but not least, it is a good idea to put a little vinyl tape on your socket if you do not have a poly coated socket. So let's just say you're running off your wheels or whatever you might be doing, and you are going from lug nut to lug nut, and it's just banging and bumping. Well, what you're doing, if you don't have any protection on your socket, is you're scratching your rims. You're chipping the paint, the finish right off of your rims. So you could be pretty gifted or skilled with your impact, but chances are when you're in the zone and you're going fast, this slips off, you go to the next nut and you ding your rail a little. Well, without any coating, really scratching your rim. So what I do is I just wrap a little vinyl tape around the top of the socket, not a whole bunch, nothing crazy, just enough. And that way when I'm tightening up my wheel or removing my wheel, it doesn't scratch the rim accidentally. Now you're supposed to use a torque wrench on your wheels, and you should use a torque wrench on your wheels. I'm just going to tighten mine up with an impact. Between you and me, don't tell nobody that I did this, but definitely use a torque wrench. What I'll do though is I'm going to start patting, and this torque wrench or this impact is pretty big, and it has different settings, and I like to put it on setting number 2 when I do my rims, my wheels, because the other settings have too much torque. But I have found that setting number 2 is pretty close to specs, so that's what we're gonna run with. But I'm gonna, oh, there you see I slipped off. But I'm gonna finish this up. This is it for the video. Tips for your truck. My name is Sean. This is DS Trucks. See you guys in the next video. Over and out.